Welcome back, everybody. Here's another epidose. Today we're not talking about eating meat. We're talking about eating soy. Yes, perhaps one of the bigger enemies of mankind is a silly little bean that someone decided we all needed to eat. We needed to make baby formula out of it, and that it was somehow going to save us and the planet. So today I got a couple of the usual suspects with me, Karina and Justin, and we're going to go over our experience with soy and then all sorts of scientific and anecdotal stuff that we dug up for this video, because we all feel like people ought to know that eating soy is probably not very good for you. So anyways, Karina, you want to tell us about your experience personally eating soy?
Yeah. So it started with getting into a cult, and then that cult in Switzerland also was connected with a soy factory.
This is their website. It looks good, but it doesn't taste good.
Soy factory, and it distributes tofu products to a lot of health food stores, unfortunately.
This is the online market I order from, and they have those Soyana products. That sucks. They have all those shitty soy products. They really don't taste nice. This is like this one, like chewing gum. Anyway, you see those burgers? Why would you need vegan burgers?
And of course, the cult had some connection there.
And our singing group gave concert there sometimes. That's me. That's another picture. Fuck, I'm still in those pictures. Well, what can you do?
And many worked there, and then we also had cheaper prices. So I tried a lot of that stuff, and every time I ate it, it was like a stone in my stomach, so I couldn't digest it, and it also didn't taste that well. Yeah, but I still ate a lot of soy, many different products, and I really think it has done a lot of harm to my body.
So the histamine issue wasn't so bad back then when I started eating soy, but I certainly started getting more migraines. I'm not sure if the trigger was the first marathon, because after that I had such a bad migraine. Yeah, and then from then on I had regular migraines whenever I did something that was too much on the body. And the menstrual migraines. But apart from that, it was actually okay until I had a burnout in 2007. That was about 5 years later.
To my brain, my digestion, because I was also bloated. even as a vegetarian. And later I had that burnout, and that also led to, yeah, I would say the histamine issue started around then, after the burnout, after that shock, and that was from that long abuse through the vegetarian diet and soy. Because my standard meal as a vegetarian was always veggies, rice, and tofu. And after every meal, I was like totally dead. I was 30 minutes out of order. I couldn't move. I just sat there, digestion really not working fine and feeling extremely exhausted. Like a phone that has no charge anymore.
Completely dead.
And I had to sit there and recharge until my body was able to move again. It was that extreme. So, and then at some point I stopped eating soy, but that was many years later. Yeah, that's my story with soy.
Yeah, so I think thinking back, my first experience with soy was probably as a teenager, at least one moment that comes to mind, because I had a sister that was vegan, and she brought over like a tofurkey. I don't know if anyone on our channel's ever tried tofurkey, but it's a turkey made of tofu, and it's browned and cooked to where it looks like a real turkey. It's really silly.
How can anyone think this will taste the same as turkey? And why do they always have to imitate everything?
And then probably miso soup, because I love sushi. Probably miso. In the miso soup, it tastes pretty good, I'll admit. Like, you can't really taste the soy. But that's the interesting thing about tofu, is that it pretty much turns into whatever you cook it with.
I agree. Miso soup really tastes great, especially in cold weather. When we were doing our long distance races, then there was always somebody serving miso soup. And I really liked the taste. I really liked it. And you can combine it with everything. You can put into it whatever you like. Veggies or pasta. Yeah. So that's why as a vegetarian you can really survive well on that diet, because it tastes quite good if you combine it with the miso and the tamari sauce, which is soy sauce.
Extremely bland, so it needs to be flavored and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And, you know, I'll hand it to the vegans. They get pretty creative with it. Like, there's a vegan restaurant near my house, and they would have these vegan tofu, like chicken nuggets, and these even like what looked like hot wings, you know, that were vegan and made of tofu. So, I mean, you know, they process it so many different ways. You can pretty much turn it into what seems like anything. And then the only thing that I also had soy milk from time to time, and tried to get the organic and, you know, one that doesn't have all the chemicals and stuff like in it. I think the company was like Eden Soy. And then, but that stuff was really expensive. It was like $5 for a quarter quart or whatever. It was like ridiculous. And then tempeh, tempeh give me migraines for sure. So tempeh is like really processed soy, but it turns into almost what looks like a beef patty, almost, if I had to describe it. And usually with a lot of like sweet sauce or something like that. So if you see tempeh, you know, plant-based tempeh patty or something like that, or skewers, that's what that is. It's just even more highly processed soy. And that would give me a migraine within 24 hours, like a horrible migraine, upset stomach, within 24 hours of eating tempeh. Yeah, so, and then I started reading up on soy, and I think I went from soy to more rice-based products. I also had soy ice cream too. Yeah, the soy, so delicious, the soy ice cream. Yeah, because I was gluten-free.
I have tried that one too, yes.
Because I was gluten-free, dairy-free for a long time, and soy is technically dairy-free and gluten-free. So, you know, soy products seem fine. The Amy's meals, the microwave meals, the soy, I think they have like a soy meatloaf thing that I would eat all the time when I was more plant-based. And also they had a soy like noodle thing with rice noodles and tofu in it, which was pretty good. But again, so a lot of these products, they always throw in like a sweet sauce or something to make it sweet. You know, it's, you can never just buy some tofu, throw it in a pan, fry it up, and then eat it. Nobody is doing that, you know? So yeah, so I specifically remember the migraines would get worse after soy, and then smartening up, and I know we're gonna go into it, but how men especially should watch their soy intake.
Yeah, I think my big misadventure into soy started when the first time I ever read a book about protein or something like that was Protein Power by Michael Eads and Mary Dan Eads, you know. And the whole reason why I read that book, this is a while ago too, quite a while ago. I got stuck in an airport with no luggage or nothing. My flight got canceled. I got rerouted, and you know, I was looking at one of the gift shops and I saw this book, and I'm like, oh well, it's nice. It's a, you know, little paperback. You know, it's thick, but you know, it's not very, it's gonna be easy to travel with. And I'm like, well, I got nothing else to do. This is before we could sit and watch everything on our phone. You know, there was no video on the phone back then.
Shout out to the people that are watching us in the airport. Thank you for choosing us as your airport entertainment.
Look across at the gift shop and see if they have a copy of Protein Power by Michael Eads, MD. But anyways, I read that, and of course I still had all this fear in my mind of eating meat and saturated fat, and so naturally soy had become that alternative to meat. And you know, that's really what happened to it. Is the traditional, you know, soy or tofu type products were kind of uncommon in the United States, and it kind of took on its own life. So that, like, I know that whole firm and extra firm style of tofu were American inventions because we didn't really have the cultural history of traditional tofu in this country, and people were just like, what do we do with this stuff, right? So they started pressing it into that firm and extra firm and kind of using it as a meat substitute. And I tried all kinds of things with it. Like you said, if you don't put some sort of sauce on it, it's just flavorless glop, you know? And it does not digest that well. Even the protein powders, the soy-based protein powders, the liquids, they don't digest that well. And I remember like trying to work out in the morning after drinking some of that, and just, it's just so heavy in the stomach, you know? It's just like, feel like you're gonna hurl if you're trying to row or something. It's just, it's not good. So I stuck with it for quite a while. I mean, the other thing was too, like, the tofu's cheaper than meat, you know. It's like $1, $2 a pound for this real solid feeling sort of thing. But like you said, you don't put some sort of sauce on it, and everything you buy that's like a prepared food, it does already come with some sort of sauce. It's got sugar in it. If you buy regular soy milk, it's got a ton of sugar in it. You know, same thing with like the almond milk. So regular stuff, it's got heaps of corn syrup usually in it, you know, stuff like that, all these flavorings. And so I kind of meandered around down that rabbit hole for quite a while, you know, and then I didn't hear anybody say that there's anything wrong with it. You know, like it's so much better for you. You definitely should eat this instead of meat. You know, even a lean chicken breast better for you than a lean chicken breast. You know, so all that ridiculousness. I didn't know any better. So for years, I tried the powders, the tofu. I ate edamame all the time. And I did notice after a while, I was like, I can't eat this stuff because the edamame in particular was hard on the stomach. You know, I didn't feel good when I ate it. You know, it seemed like it took forever to digest this super healthy little bean. I don't know if people know, you guys know what edamame is, right?
Yeah.
It's like a little.
This is how edamame looks like. If you go to a sushi restaurant, you will definitely see them.
But I think part of the problem with that is they're not properly detoxified because all beans need to be soaked, right, to bring down the toxic levels. So all these beans are toxic, some more than others, but they're all toxic, and you've got to bring down the toxicity in them, right? And that's why you should soak them and slow cook them, and that's just to make them tolerable. But I don't think that level of toxicity ever goes to zero, and I think people don't realize that. So.
Yeah, I really tripped out because I had edamame like years after eating tofu. And so when I had it and then I was told, oh, that's soybeans, I was like, what the hell? How the hell do you go from that to this hard chunk thing in the supermarket or like so if you're having miso soup and edamame, you're just having processed and unprocessed soybean. And it's like a real mind meld when like I realized that. It's so weird.
Well, I know that tofu, they basically grind the beans into soy milk, right? And then they add like vinegar and that turns it to a solid. So they're basically clumping it like just like sour milk clumps and you get that curd. That's exactly what they're doing. So you could do the same thing, I think, with like milk. Or if you ever played a joke on somebody and had them drink a cement mixer, you guys ever done that? Oh, okay, so you get people to take a shot of like the Irish cream. What's it called? Bailey's Irish cream. Yeah. You know, it's like a milky. You know.
I have actually tried that as a kid.
Cream, you know, it's like a milky, you know, liquor. So you put the shot of that in their mouth, and then you make them take a shot of lime juice or lemon juice, and it instantly clumps into a blob in your mouth. So that's essentially the process of making tofu. You're taking milk, soy milk, and you're throwing vinegar in it, and it clumps into a solid. And then to get it to be really firm, they just keep squeezing it. They keep squeezing the water out so that they compress the bean curd, this solidified glop into a thing. So that's how it works. So now we've all talked about our experience with soy. So we start banging away at science and anecdotal evidence here. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I could just read this quote from the book.
Okay.
If you like.
Yeah, show us the book.
That's from Hala Daniels. She is known as the anti-soy lady. And she wrote a lot about soy.
This is the first chapter, Soy in the East. The ancient Chinese valued the soybean as a national treasure and honored it with the name the yellow jewel. Yes, the Chinese revered the soybean, but they did not eat it. The soybean is one of the 5 sacred grains, along with rice, millet, barley, and wheat. This designation is odd in several respects. The soybean is a legume, not really a grain. and it was not originally used much for food. Soybeans did, however, distinguish themselves. Farmers grew soybean plants as green manure, as a cover crop plowed under to enrich the soil between plantings and food crops. Soy plants live symbiotically with Rhizobium, a strain of bacteria that forms nodules on the roots of plants in order to capture nitrogen from the air and fix it in the soil. The Chinese written character for rice, barley, wheat, and millet show the grains that are eaten. The one for soy shows the powerful nitrogen-fixing roots. Taming the bean. Soy went from nitrogen fixer to fermented food no earlier than about 2,500 years ago. Until then, the Chinese considered soybeans inedible. How the ancient Chinese knew that soybeans remain toxic after ordinary cooking remains a mystery. The meat without a bone. Tofu, which is a precipitated rather than a fermented product, came about the same time as miso. Legend has it that in 164 BC, Lord Liu An of Huainan, China, a renowned alchemist, meditator, and ruler, discovered that the puree of cooked soybeans could be separated into solids and liquid using nigari, a form of magnesium chloride found in seawater. The drained curds were formed into solid cakes, called tofu. Liu An's initial reason for turning soybean dross into tofu gold was his desire to add a low-cost protein to the vegetarian monastic diet. Over time, the monks may have noticed that randy behavior declined when tofu consumption went up. The aptly named meat without a bone soon appeared regularly on monastery menus as an aid to spiritual development and sexual abstinence. A dietary strategy validated by recent studies showing that the plant form of estrogens in soy can lower testosterone levels. Tofu became a staple in Buddhist monasteries and was invested with spiritual powers that only the truly enlightened are likely to fully comprehend. For example, Bodhidharma, a holy man who founded the Chinese Zen school, decided to test tofu's understanding of the Buddha's way by engaging it in Dharma combat. Dharma means the ultimate law or right conduct. What exactly Bodhidharma meant or how he accomplished this testing is less than clear, though tofu's sponge-like capacity to absorb nearly anything apparently carried the day. Consumption of tofu soon spread throughout China, Korea, and Southeast Asia. By 700 AD, it was accepted as a meat or fish replacement, at least when pork, seafood, and other preferred sources were unaffordable or unavailable. Except in areas of famine, tofu was served as a condiment, consumed in small amounts, usually in fish broth, not as a main course.
So, and apparently Japanese women, when they know that their husbands are cheating on them, then they cook them a lot of tofu and soy, and that's how they keep them in line.
So let's just recap. One, it's well known that soy is high in something called phytoestrogen, or molecules that are plant-based but very similar to estrogen, a hormone, generally considered a female hormone, but something that we all have. So we know that when you eat things made from soybeans, your estrogen levels effectively go up in your body. And in this case, we also know that it seems to lower testosterone levels. So something to think about, right? For people who aren't familiar with estrogen or phytoestrogen or sources like this. And like Justin said, this plant protein, even when fermented or processed or whatever, detoxified, tends to be more difficult to digest, right? I like to point out that, before human beings learned to detoxify beans, and part of that being cooking them, how would we eat these things? Because we would get sick, we could potentially die. I mean, if you eat like raw kidney beans or something like that, that can be lethal. You wouldn't have to eat that much to die. And that could be both from the oxalates and the phytic acid, right? Yeah, so exactly. I think that's a strong point right there, because we clearly didn't evolve to eat beans, or legumes of any kind, because how would, before we were cooking, before we had methods for soaking them, how would we ingest this stuff? You know what I mean? It's only with the advent of technologies of detoxifying foods like this and then being able to cook them that we've been able to eat them. So there's clearly a big jump in there where we weren't eating this stuff, right? I mean, yeah. You guys, that makes sense,
no
right?
Idea how they ever found out that they could eat it. Probably they were hungry and then they tried everything.
Yeah.
That was like probably a fallback food. We know that especially in China there were a lot of famines, and possibly then they just started eating that because they had nothing else. I don't know.
Yeah, I think plants were probably fallback foods, like you said. And one of the things about soy is it grows in a wide variety of soils, right? So its ability to fix nitrogen in the soil, around the roots, is one of the things that makes it a strong contender in most places in the world, because you can get protein from it, and eating soy is better than starving for sure. But that's a long ways from it being a good health food, right? It's a long ways from it being a first choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So from that reading, it sounded like from an early understanding, the Chinese knew, or the Asian culture knew, that soy was more or less not to be eaten unless you want to stop your cheating husband. So do you know when it came to the West how the science got mixed up, or why it was touted as like a superfood or a great alternative, Karina?
Well, what I found out that it was actually like a waste food from the soy oil industry. So what they did, they just with everything else, they tried to make a profit out of it, and then they tried to put soy into everything. And today we have it in 60% of all the processed foods. It's in supplements, it's even in cosmetics, and then you have the so-called health-conscious people that then think, yeah, that soy is healthy, and it's all the propaganda. It was a waste food. but instead they just sell it to us as something that is really healthy.
There is so much misinformation about soy because things like this really piss me off. It's so wrong to say that soy is beneficial.
And they even market it as making the males muscular. Like it does the opposite.
So there was this myth going around: soy tanks testosterone in strength training men, but soy actually lowers testosterone. There were warnings about the dangers of soy protein. The soy industry, of course, touts its soy protein products as the ideal way for athletes and fitness buffs to build strength and lean muscle. The research doesn't actually bear that out, though. The soy industry is gifted at putting a positive spin on anything and everything, including a recent study out of the University of Connecticut, that they should have tried to spin it deep into the ground. The soy drinkers did not end up with more of the female hormone. The researchers did, however, find lower testosterone levels and higher cortisol levels. In other words, less of the manly hormone and more of the stress hormone. Sounds like stressed out soy boys to me.
Yeah.
It does the opposite, but then the magazines, they market it as some fantastic food that will give you a boost and make you look really great. But then, yeah, you see that men grow boobs from that, men boobs even, and get bloated and never look the way those magazines try to make you believe.
So he is just one of many. He believed in soy milk, and he gained weight and grew some boobs. Awesome. So just be warned, don't eat that fake soy tofu turkey. Eat real turkey. That's much healthier.
I'd like to throw a little something in there too. And I think it was particularly in the 70s in the United States when tofu in particular started taking off. But part of what was behind that was, I'm going to share this right here. If you see this right here, this is a website called soyinfocenter.com. And if you go here, you can read about the history of the Seventh-day Adventist work with soy foods, vegetarianism, meat alternatives, wheat gluten, dietary fiber, and peanut butter from 1863 to 2013. And several people have mentioned in other videos and books that the Seventh-day Adventists were a strong force in promoting soy as an industrial crop. So they're like, yeah, we're pushing this Garden of Eden diet, which became veganism. And the plant crops are typically relatively low in protein. People need more protein. So they really pushed the development of things like peanuts and soy. So if anybody wants to read more about it, I won't read the whole thing here, but here's a nice Now, and this website's not being critical of the Seventh-day Adventists. It's not being critical of soy, right? These are proponents of soy talking about the historical development. So I just figure I'll put the link in the show notes, hopefully to everything, including the book that Karina held up there, Protein Power, or whatever Justin's got. But anyways, you can read about the development. And I think one of the misnomers is that in Japan and China, that soy was like a staple food when it really was mostly a side dish, I think.
Exactly.
Primarily because they knew you could only eat so much of it, right? And this is true even with livestock. Like hogs, you can only feed them so much soy or they get too soft. They start having tissue issues. Their meat gets too soft. They have joint issues. And I believe, even like cows typically only eat a small amount of soy. It's going to depend. Like if you're talking about fattening up a cattle for, a steer or something to eat, it's going to have a different diet than, say, a dairy cow that's producing milk all the time. But you can only feed, cattle so much soy as well. So not too surprising that the amount of soy that a human being could tolerate is also limited. So.
Yeah. But as you said, it's they use the soy to fatten up the animal. So what does that tell you? If they use it to fatten up those animals, it's the same for humans.
Mm-hmm. So, it's a common criticism in the cattle industry that, beef stock is often given estrogen, Now, it's a tiny, tiny amount of estrogen, like to us, like if we're going to eat a piece of steak, it's going to have probably less than 10 nanograms of estrogen in it. Whereas if you ate an egg or something, it's going to have considerably more. It's going to have like 200-300 nanograms of estrogen. And then on top of that, your body, even a normal healthy male, is going to produce, I don't know what it is, like 20,000 nanograms or something like that. So, but the truth is when you're constantly eating it as a food, it does seem to typically make people fatter, and like I said, supposedly a number of men have gotten large breasts, or they call it gynecomastia or something like that. So from eating a lot of soy. So it's both a matter of concentration and a matter, how much you're eating and how frequently you're eating it, but also what other foods are you replacing, right? So if you're replacing real meat with something like this fake meat or boneless meat, is that what they call it? The boneless meat?
Boneless
without bone? Yeah. I think you're displacing the healthier food, which is actually meat, which we evolved to eat, with a food like this, which we did not evolve to eat, right? It's not species appropriate, right? And it comes laden with carbohydrates, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just reading this thing that you sent, Karina, from Dr. Kayla T. Daniel, how soy tanks testosterone in strength training men. And I'm really interested in how they talk about, the spin on it, how they can twist, anything to, make it seem like it's better than it is. But it says here, so we just have to be clear, because we don't want to spread like fake news, that eating a bunch of soy apparently will not, turn you into a woman, but it will decrease your testosterone and increase your cortisol levels. And cortisol is a stress hormone. And then here towards the end, they talk about in a study that they had men with like discharge, I guess like nipple discharge, as well as, I think nipple discharge, breast enlargement, slight decrease in testosterone, and hot flashes, which are almost like menopausal symptoms. But this occurred in men, I believe. Do you remember that study, Karina?
I have not looked into this one, but I have looked into other stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, not good for men especially. Did you find anything on women, why women should? Because, you know, I've always heard that too, like some excuses are, well, oh yeah, men shouldn't have soy, but it's okay for women. Do you
No, it's absolutely not okay for, I think men in particular should be really careful not drinking the soy milk. I'm looking for the word, it slipped my mind. Hypospadias, it's called.
Yeah, hypospadia. So I think I have the research right here. The ALSPAC study team, Avalon longitudinal study of pregnancy and childhood of 7,928 boys born to mothers taking part in the study. 51 hypospadias cases were identified. It's not a terribly high percentage, but
yeah, but also,
it's let me know if this is the study you're looking at. Maternal intake of phytoestrogens.
Yeah.
Can you guys see that? Can you see that, Justin? Is that the one you got? Okay. I'm just sharing it with the audience, so go ahead and comment.
Yeah.
Is that all you got?
Oh, I was reading it, but now I can't get back to my screen. I don't know why. We're
I'm
on your
sorry.
screen now. Yeah.
I'm stopping it.
That's
Yeah.
okay. I mean, it does also say here that there was no significant difference in the proportion of hypospadias cases among mothers who smoked, consumed alcohol, or for any aspect of their very previous reproductive history. Significant differences were detected for some aspects of the maternal diet, i.e. vegetarian and iron supplementation in the first half of pregnancy. Mothers who are vegetarian for their pregnancy had adjusted the odds ratio. So I guess if you take iron, I think you can help with your odds and probably prevent that some. But it's very interesting here. So, you know, you can almost read this in a way that having soy while pregnant can have similar effects to smoking or consuming alcohol while pregnant. I mean, obviously not to that extreme, but I just find it interesting that they put it on the same line in the study of smoking and alcohol. Do you guys know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah. That's what made me wonder if it's really that bad and has this effect. Yeah, but for women, there are many vegans and vegetarians probably too, but I think it's really in the vegan community and what I experienced myself. If you have a high intake of soy products, which you probably will, because you don't eat any other protein, so your thyroid really gets messed up because the phytates, they inhibit that enzyme, so it blocks the T3 and T4, and then that's really messing with your thyroid, and that's why so many vegans get those hypothyroid symptoms. They have their hair is falling out, dry skin, depression, being bloated, brittle nails, fatigue, brain fog. That's so typical, and that's also a hypothyroid symptom. So it will really mess up your thyroid if you have too many soy products in your diet.
So it says right here, according to the National Cancer Institute, incidence of thyroid cancer have nearly doubled since the early 1970s. Thyroid cancer now affects 11 people per 100,000 in the United States. Soy is widely marketed as a health food, although soybeans actually contain phytoestrogens known as isoflavones, while not true hormones, isoflavones closely resemble estradiol. The most potent form of these three form estrogen found in the human body, and the form of estrogen has been implicated in thyroid cancer. So it's really interesting how you have this high percentage of thyroid cancer. And like you were talking about the 1970s, the high soy production and pushing on Western audiences. So we all know that correlation is not causation, but I think certainly something for people to look at.
Yeah, for sure.